Congratulations to all for surviving the practice round. Remember, practice rounds don't matter. They're like the preseason in any professional sport. Nobody remembers after the season begins how anybody did in the preseason because it doesn't matter. Preseason is just about learning and testing. And so that's true for the practice rounds as well. I'm going to discuss practice round one as if you were competing seriously. Obviously, I understand that most of you were just clicking numbers for the sake of clicking numbers. So any comment that I make about, well, somebody made a mistake or something like that, don't let that bother you because I'm going to treat something as real even though we understand it's not real. These series of 3 videos is going to be very important for you in succeeding in BSG because I'm going to show you how you can use the information to win. I've jokingly make that comment about the West Texas School of Management, how we doing, why we doing, and how we going to do better. But trust me, if you go through that process of how did we do, what were our performance drivers, and what can we do to turn our performance toward even better results, then you're going to be well served. So the first product that I encourage you to look through is the Footwear Industry Report. So this is the rankings for the game. I'm going to be G Company as I go through this assessment. G Company actually had nobody competing it. It's one that I will delete here in the next couple of days. And ironically enough, it was right in the middle, which is to say it made no decisions and it did average. I can look at this and see, okay, who were the top players? C, B, and D. I was noticeably behind the 3 of them. You can see in both the scores. E and I were together, and then another gap to A and F. Just kind of good to know about. So this is what it was for the current year. Obviously, game to date is going to be the same because there's only been 1 round. On to the next screen. No real surprises should come to me on this screen because I already get this from the overall score. I was a little below investor expectations in earnings per share, barely met it in ROE. My stock price was slightly below investor expectations. And you're going to find I don't worry about investor expectations. I worry about the other competitors that I have. So not much on that page. Onto the third page, credit rating. Remember, this is taken out of the scoring, but it's still important because it's going to influence the rate that I pay on my debt, and it's also going to influence my stock price. So don't think that just because I've removed it from the scoring, it's not important. Image rating, I see that B did well. Mine's not too bad, not too big of a split here. This is definitely something I pay attention to because a lot of times it represents how much market share a company has. It is a formal part of the score. Corporate social responsibility, we can see that on average, the industry didn't spend much. Somebody spent a lot, and probably everybody else spent none. The danger here, I'll just give you a little tip. Don't overspend here. There's a way to spend on the realm of 3 to 4 million a year and get a lot of bang for the buck. When you start spending more than that, it can cause some problems. This next thing is called bonus point awards, but what I look for this is forecasting accuracy. And something very unusual happened in this practice round, which is to say that everybody either met or exceeded their revenue forecast. The reason that that happens is because you had shoes to sell that turns out that people wanted to buy, but usually when you see positive variance, it's because you did not check the little block about assume that my special order bids are accepted. And so I picked up special order bids that I excluded from my forecast is usually what happens. It's very unusual to see all these plus numbers. Usually you see minus numbers. So I think you'll see that will happen once we get into the industry. But I do pay attention to who, I pay attention to this. It gives me a sense of what do people think was going to happen, what really happened to them, how aggressive might they be, those sorts of things. So there's a little good competitor intel that can come from this. Leapfrog reward, you only want to win that once because that's the way that you prove that you're a consistent performer. There is a lot of information on this chart. A lot of it is done by reading this area over here. For example, higher than normal superior materials usage led to higher superior usage led to higher prices, blah, blah, blah. I can't talk. Over here, this tells us about inventory clearance and shipments. And you can see that the pairs available for sale were actually 1% lower than the demand, which is to say everybody sold everything they could have, and if somebody had produced more, they would have been able to sell it. This just says that in terms of competitive intensity, we were right at what the computer thought we were going to be when it built the models. And this is a kind of a statement that goes along with everything. Here I get a sense of what are people doing capacity-wise. F actually sold out of their Asia Pacific plant. That's unusual. Don't see that happen. But good on that team for trying it out. I will caution everybody, unless you're planning to sell a plant and build another plant, which is a huge strategic decision in and of itself, don't think that you're going to shrink your way to success. This game is going to require you to grow, not shrink. Financial summary. This is where I get not only a sense of how I did, but I really start to take stock of the competitors. So I can compare myself with net sales revenue, a little above the average. I can see in terms of B, C, and D, that I was a little bit below them, which might explain why I performed a little bit below them. I'm looking for any big exceptions. Boy, F really spent a lot less in marketing. That's interesting. So that's something where I would just, well, that's interesting. I got to keep an eye on what F did and what the results of that big cut in marketing were. And then you can see net profit. Remember who came in first? C, who has the highest net profit. C, who came in second? B, who has the second highest net profit. B, who came in third? D, who has the third highest net profit. D. And so I reiterate that, I point that out just to reiterate. If you make money, then you're going to do well. Then you get into things like dividend payments and share buybacks, those sorts of things. That'll be important for taking those really great results and then absolutely optimizing them so that your stock price soars. In terms of cash on hand, nobody ran out. That's unusual and that's good. You can see F has a lot on the balance sheet. That's because they sold the plant. I would define a good level of cash to finish the year with between about $5 and $15 million. Debt, nothing new there. A bought some shares back. Good for them. They also issued a dividend, so they were very pleasing to their shareholders. They finished in next to last place, and the reason for that is they just didn't make as much money as some of the competitors did. Had they, though, they would have been very pleasing to their investors. Down in this, use these numbers with a little bit of caution. For example, is it a good thing or a bad thing to have the highest percentage cost of pairs sold? You would tend to say, well, it's a bad thing. But in reality, if you're running a very aggressive cost leadership strategy, you may actually be in first place and have the highest cost of pairs sold. The one column I pay a lot of attention to is the days in inventory. This lets me know whether somebody had excess shoes. This is the gift that keeps on giving in a negative way. If you have excess shoes from one round to the next, it begins to hurt you. Now, C with 48, that's not really a big deal. That can be driven by their inventory response decisions. Anything over about 75 starts to become concerning. Definitely things in the triple digits are very concerning and they're very problematic. So it was good that nobody experienced that. Nothing really significant news-wise here this year. This next graphic is where I start to transition from how I did to why I did. This gives me a comparative on all of these factors versus the industry. Now, I'm not going to take the time to go through them in detail, but I would spend considerable time looking at these. Now, when you look at manufacturing cost, you can see that I was right around the industry average. But you have to take some of this in context, and by that I mean, well, how did my shoe compare? If my shoe was the worst in the industry in terms of quality, PQ and or SQ and number of models and the like, and I have a above average price, well, that's a problem. By the same token, if I have the best shoe in the industry, highest number of models, highest SQ rating, and I've got a production statistic where I'm close to the industry average, that's a total touchdown. So you have to add context into this. Again, all of these benchmarks are important. Going down and comparing your profit margins, all very important. I look and see here that, for example, somebody sold private label shoes at a loss. That does not go well for them. On to the final page. This is where I see what happens with celebrity signings. I see that E was active. They got one for 3 million, one for 6 million, and D got one for 6 million. Get to see the bids that were out there. Celebrities can make a big difference, good and bad, in the results. It all depends on the price you pay for them. So let's just take it to the extremes. What if you got Peyton Manning for $500,000 a year? That's clearly a win. What if you got Peyton Manning for $8 million? You can only bid a maximum of 10, and you can see his demand is not all that high. So if I paid 8 to get him, I'm guaranteed to have overpaid. So the fact that I signed him is really a source of competitive disadvantage. It's all about figuring out the right price. And I talked about in the videos how you could start to figure out that right price. And those who do and figure out how they need to bid, it's going to be to their advantage. Get to see what some of the trends are. You all actually raised prices, raised quality some. That would be a little bit unusual, but in the practice round, people don't know what they're doing, and that's okay. So this completes my look through the footwear industry report. The next product that I go to is the competitive intelligence report, and I'll talk about that in the next video.